Hey everyone, I'm Matthew Cornwell with Get Taped, not in Atlanta, and I don't have all of my fancy graphics, but just imagine Brooke's face, ding! And let's get to our topic, which is confirmation bias. For background, first of all, let's talk about where I am and why I'm using this as my backdrop. I was listening to a podcast, Stuff You Should Know, specifically the episode on water towers, and lo and behold, I get to New York City for pleasure. I stare out my hotel window, and what do I notice? Woo, water tower. Water tower, water tower, everywhere. What is up with that? Well, it's a very well-known principle called the Bader-Meinhof effect or something. I don't know. I looked it up. Can't remember how to pronounce it. Anyways, it's the same effect of when you buy a new car or a new smartwatch or a smartphone and you start to see that product everywhere and you realize how common it is. And you're thinking that wasn't true before I bought that. Yes, the same amount of people had those things before you bought it. You just are now tuning into it more. Part of what underlies that principle is confirmation bias, which most of us are pretty familiar with. But just a quick recap. Confirmation bias goes thusly. You learn a new fact or a new truth, or it's presented to you as truth or fact. And this is where marketing can really start to manipulate you. Well, once your brain thinks it's fact or truth, then your brain will start to look for more evidence to support this original theory or fact, which is fine, especially if it is a truth or a fact. But where it gets dangerous is that your brain will actually start to ignore evidence that's to the contrary of this truth or this theory. And as actors, this can get us into a lot of trouble when it comes to our careers, because if you're looking at the data, which is that maybe you haven't booked in X number of months, or you haven't had an audition in X number of weeks, well, that's data, that's truth, that's fact, that's fine. But we all start to do the following, which is you start to try to figure out the cause of it, and we all start to point fingers back at ourselves as being less than actors, or we start to blame our agents for not submitting us or not liking us, or casting must hate us, right? We start to get emotional, and we start to then tell ourselves that that must be the truth. And then what happens with confirmation bias is that once we believe that that is the truth, that we suck as actors, that our agents hate us, that casting hates us, etc., well, then we start to look for more evidence to support that. And we refute all the evidence to the contrary. So even though something might actually happen that's good, like you might get a pin or an avail check, we're searching for the negative in it because we need to reinforce our theory. We need to confirm our original theory, which is that something's wrong with us. Is dinner ready? What's happening? Anyways, New York City. So we got to be very, very careful of this effect as actors, because once you establish this false narrative in your mind that something is wrong with you, or that your agent hates you, or that casting hates you, you will, if left unchecked, continue to try and reinforce and confirm this theory. So stop it. And I need to point that finger back at myself, because confirmation bias affects all humans. And here's the kicker: even when we know that it's a thing, we are still susceptible to it. So we have to work extra hard to make sure that we don't get caught up in that confirmation bias. Going back to my original little story about the Stuff You Should Know podcast, if I were to listen to another episode on fire escapes, well, what would that do? I would stop obsessing over all of those water towers in the background, and I would start noticing the fire escapes, and it would start to broaden my perspective of this background behind me. And to then pull that back into the acting world, if I can start to look at it from more angles, if I can start to see the positive, or at least keep a neutral perspective on my career, then maybe, just maybe, I'll be able to keep a broad perspective and not get lost in one aspect of that, one angle on that data or on that situation, especially if that angle is a negative angle. So be careful with confirmation bias, be aware of it, and work a little extra hard to make sure that you don't get lost down those rabbit holes of negativity. That's it for now. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on set.